Welcome to a new episode of our podcast dedicated to regulatory affairs and life science. In today's episode, we will talk of biocidal products and the new draft for the guideline on substances of concern. Based on the guidance already presented by the European Commission during the meetings of the competent authority, the European Chemical Agency has published a new draft of a guideline totally dedicated to the identification and assessment of the so-called substances of concern within the framework of the Biocidal Products Regulation EU 528 of 2012, the BPR. This publication is an important tool for the whole chemical and manufacturing industry and intends to outline an applicative interpretation of the SOC definition already present in the BPR regulation under Article 3.1f in order to eliminate any uncertainty regarding the identification and classification of a non-active substance, a co-formulant, as a COC within a biocidal formulation that has existed over the years for applicants as well as for competent authorities of member states. The management of hazardous co-formulants included among biocidal products has always required a relevant analytical accuracy, but the new guideline is trying to standardize procedures at community level, imposing a deep review of companies' portfolios. To understand the extent of this novelty, the very concept of substance of concern must be contextualized within the European legal framework. According to Article 3 of the Biocidal Products Regulation, a substance of concern is defined as any substance other than the active substance which has an inherent capacity to cause an adverse effect, immediately or in the more distant future, on humans, animals, or the environment, and is present or is produced in a biocidal product in sufficient concentration to present risks. Until today, the criteria to establish when a co-formulant should be considered as such and our relevant assessment of its toxicological and ecotoxicological risk should be carried out were fragmented in several guidance documents and decisions by technical committees. The current initiative of the European Chemicals Agency aims at grouping, updating and making binding these operational methods in a single official reference text. The draft submitted by the ECHA bilaterally addresses the two main stakeholders of the regulatory market. On one side, there are chemical companies and authorization holders that must prepare registration dossiers and demonstrate the safety and efficacy of their own formulations. On the other, there are competent national authorities that have the task of assessing the conformity of these dossiers before granting marketing authorizations. The harmonization of the guidelines has the goal of sensibly reducing the discrepancies found in the opinions of the various member states, an event that in the past has often slowed down the procedures for the mutual recognition of national authorizations, creating bureaucratic barriers and market asymmetries. The timeline established by the European Chemicals Agency for the final adoption of this document is structured in order to ensure the maximum participation of industrial and institutional stakeholders. The current phase provides for the direct involvement of technical experts from the working groups of the Biocidal Products Committee, the BPC, along with the representatives of the trade associations accredited at European level. These subjects will have the whole summer for a thorough examination of the text to evaluate its technical and economic impact and to send their official comments. This consultation process is essential to refine the guidelines and make them applicable to complex industrial realities without compromising the primary goal of protecting public health and the ecosystem. Then the agency will collect and examine the feedbacks received to draft the final text, whose official publication has already been scheduled in July 2027. Companies have therefore a well-defined time frame to start the investigation of their own formulation and plan any required investment. There could be far-reaching practical implications for enterprises that manufacture or market biocidal products in case additional studies are requested along with existing ones. The identification of a substance of concern in a formulation does not automatically imply a ban for its use, but it imposes the obligation to carry out a detailed risk assessment for each expected use scenario. If this assessment shows that the risk for either human health, especially for vulnerable groups such as children or health operators, or for the environment is not acceptable, the authorities can impose severe use restrictions or deny the product authorization. Moreover, the presence of these substances directly affects the classification and the finished product according to the Classification, Labeling and Packaging Regulation, making any communication about the hazard more complex along the supply chain and conditioning consumers' and professional users' purchasing choices. Another crucial aspect addressed by the guideline is the interconnection between the Biocidal Products Regulation and the ECHA regulation. Many of the substances qualifying as of concern in biocides are already included in the candidate list of the substances of very high concern or are subject to restrictions and authorization according to the REACH regulation. The new guideline of the agency establishes clear criteria for the use of the data generated within the REACH in order to avoid duplicates in scientific tests, promoting at the same time an approach directed to reduce experiments on vertebrates. This requires a very strong internal synergy inside companies between R&D and RA that must be able to map the origin and the toxicological profile of each single starting material used with pinpoint accuracy. In this context of deep transition and increased scientific strictness, the Renzo Regulatory Affairs can be the ideal strategic partner supporting companies in the chemical sector in their harmonization with the new European directives. Thanks to a multidisciplinary team made of chemists and regulatory affairs experts with a consolidated experience with the Biocidal Products Regulation, our company is able to offer a full and custom-made consulting service. We carry out in-depth controls on the products to promptly identify the presence of potential substances of concern in the preparations, assessing the impact of the future guidelines on the corporate compliance. Moreover, the Renzo Regulatory Affairs manages the all-documental transition toward the requirements becoming effective in 2027, taking care, with the cooperation of other professionals, of planning any alternative tests, carrying out advanced risk assessments, and addressing ECHA and national competent authorities directly, ensuring business continuity for enterprises and maintaining their competitiveness in the European market. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you want to listen to other podcasts, sign up for our channel, follow up on the social media, and join us for next episode.